Hello everyone and welcome to the Skilling Open. We are in the knockout phase of the event and we have a very nice game between Wesley and Hikaru Nakamura from the semifinals. So as you know, Carlsen is facing Yanni Pomnishi. We've already shown one game from that clash. We're gonna talk about what happened after we check out this game, and this is one of the games between Wesley and Nakamura. So without further ado, let's check it out and see what happens here. We have e4 by Wesley. Sorry about that. e5 by Nakamura. Knight f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. The Italian game is on the board, and Nakamura goes for bishop to c5. And here, Wesley goes for b4. Of course, the Evans Gambit, the greatest opening ever invented in chess. However, that is only a joke. He doesn't go for this. He goes for c3 instead, the Giuoco Piano game, or the main line. And if you're wondering why I'm showing this game if the Evans Gambit wasn't even played, trust me, it gets better. We have knight f6, d3, so this is the next 10 moves are pretty much complete main theory. d6, we have castles, and h6, so these are very, very standard moves. Rook to e1, and black castles here. We've mentioned like 20 times that knight g4 going after the pawn here doesn't really do anything. Black can just play rook e2 and next kick away the knight. Doesn't really threaten anything. So here castles by Nakamura, knight bd2 with the standard idea, shift the knight to f1, then to g3. We have a5 by black, stopping further expansion on the queen side, and now knight to f1, shifting the knight either to e3 or g3. We have bishop to e6. Nakamura offers a trade of dark square bishops, and bishop to b5 here. There is one game in the database, bishop captures on e6, was played between Ho Yifan and Arkady Naidich in 2018 Baden-Baden, and that game ended in a draw. But that's the only one. Bishop to b5 is the only move other than that played here. And here we have bishop back to b6. Knight to e7 is the most common idea. Here we have bishop to b6, also very known line. And now knight to g3. There is one well-known game between young Krzysztof Duda and Dmitry Andreikin from the 2019 FIDE World Championship, where h3 was played, and the Duda was able to win that game. Sorry, not FIDE World Championship, FIDE World Cup. Duda was able to defeat Andreikin with h3 here, but we have knight to g3. And now comes knight to h7. So this position has been reached before. Known moves are knight to e7, as it's often placed there, and queen to b8, with the idea of shifting the queen over to a7 and then posing some threat here along this diagonal. But here we have knight to h7 by Nakamura, and it is only now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game, and this is basically where our game starts. So here h3. Not allowing anything to land on that g4 square, and also you want to have the g4 outpost for your knight if you decide for something like knight to h2 to g4. Knight to g5 by Nakamura, and here Wesley trades, captures, and now d4. So it's a very common theme in chess. When your opponent is preparing to attack on the king side, you want to counterattack in the center. So here d4. And Nakamura trades. E captures on d4. Now first removing one of the defenders of the d4 square, captures on c6, B captures, and now C captures on d4. And now Wesley has a beautiful pawn chain in the center here, controlling all these four squares, and the Nakamura has the bishop pair and maybe a bit more active position. So here c5, challenging white's strong center, and now d5, attacking the light square bishop back to d7, and now a4. A4, not allowing black to play a4 himself, but black will play c4 at some point, and this will open up the dark square bishop. Just give me a second. Sorry about that. So a4, and now comes rook to e8, putting some pressure on the e4 pawn, and bishop to d2 now. Here Wesley wants to shift this bishop all the way to this diagonal. It's going to attack the g7 pawn while also defend the b2 pawn, which will be somewhat vulnerable when this rook comes to b8. So here we have c4 as planned, freeing up the dark square bishop, and now queen to f3. The queen is very useful here, as you don't want to allow black to get his queen to f6 and put some pressure on the f2 pawn. So by doing this, you stop that. And here rook to b8 by Nakamura. We have bishop to c3 now, attacking and defending, and bishop to c5 now. Just preparing bishop b4 at some point. Also rook to b3 is an idea, as the queen is still on f3. So it could be very dangerous. We have rook to e2, now defending the pawn here, and there is this pressure of bishop captures on a5, but it's never really an idea. Because here Nakamura plays f6, and now even if you capture on a5, just rook back to a8, and you have to move the bishop, and then black captures the a4 pawn. So nothing really happening there. Here we have knight to f5 by Wesley, and here bishop to b4, challenging the light square bishop, which is a very important piece in Wesley's attacking formation. So he of course moves it, he doesn't want to trade, and Nakamura repeats bishop c5, bishop back to c3, bishop back to b4, and now if Wesley doesn't want to repeat moves and draw the game, which he probably doesn't, as he does have the white pieces, and he controls a bit more space, he goes back knight to e3. And now there is pressure towards this c4 pawn, and it's not going to be easy for Nakamura to defend it. He plays bishop to c8, so defending it indirectly, because if you capture it now, bishop to a6, and you're gonna have problems here. It's a rapid game, so you don't have all that much time to think, and it could be difficult to defend this. So instead we have bishop back to d4 by Wesley, and now bishop to a6, and here knight back to f5. And now, although c3 looks like a good idea, it doesn't really do anything. White can just move the rook, and after you capture here, there's not much better, there aren't any better moves, just rook captures on b2, and that's it, nothing for black here to do. So after this, we have bishop back to c8, and now knight back to e3. Wesley again repeats, and Nakamura again repeats. Bishop a6, knight to f5, and bishop to c8. And Wesley again doesn't want a draw by a threefold repetition, so he goes rook to c1. Adds another attacker to the c4 pawn, and now queen to d7 by Nakamura. Here you have to be very careful, because a lot of things are happening here, and if you're not careful, you could lose the game on the spot. So here maybe trying bishop to c5 to get rid of that strong attacker is the way to go, or even capturing on f5. But the move Nakamura played, queen to d7, allows Wesley a bit too much, because here Wesley goes rook e to c2. And sorry about that, that's not c2. And this is a very instructive move, because Wesley wants to play h4. Of course, he wants to bust open the position and try to create some threats here, but by playing rook e to c2, if you capture right away, then just bishop a6. We can even show it captures, and then bishop to a6 will attack both of the rooks, and not much for you to do here. Although it's still, of course, very much playable for white, but in a rapid game, you don't want to do this if you don't have to. So here instead we have rook e to c2. Now there is actual threat of capturing here, and then if you allow this to fall, then c7 is weak, this is gonna fall. So here Wesley Nakamura brings the bishop back, bishop to a6, and now you've managed to get rid of one of the defenders. So the bishop left this diagonal, so one less defender for you to worry about, and only now h4. So this is what Wesley had in mind when he played h4, when he played rook e to c2 before pushing this h4 move. So here we have g captures on h4, and now queen to g4. And now it's, well, a lot of things are happening here. There's pressure on g7. Okay, as long as the queen is here, you're not getting checkmated, but you constantly have to worry about knight h6 check. Bishop captures on f6, also an idea. So yeah, it's very hard to decide what to do here. So Nakamura started running away with his king to f8, but now feel free to pause the video and find the absolute best move for Wesley while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on still going for bishop captures on f6, because that's the move Wesley played. And of course, also for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop captures on f6. And now you have to capture it. If you don't capture it, I mean, black is just falling apart. So here Nakamura captured it, and now queen captures on h4. Also just queen h5 was also possible, but Wesley has a different idea. He now wants to capture here, and he's planning on bringing the rook into the game with rook e2, rook e3, and rook g3 or maybe even h3, depending on how black defends. So here you have to be very careful. If you play something like rook e5 to make some room for your king, it's a very quick checkmate. Just queen h8 check, king f7 check here, and then queen to g8 will be checkmate. So that's one of the options, but Wesley went, Nakamura went king to g8 instead, not allowing the queen to land on h8. But now Wesley brings the rook into the game. Rook e2, and now this is coming, and Nakamura has to try something. He plays rook to e5. There isn't much you can do here. Rook to e3, now preparing to jump in with the rook, and here Nakamura tries the one last resort move. Rook captures on f5. With the idea that at least he got one of the attackers out of the way, but Wesley completely ignores him, and now not rook g3 because the rook can block, but rather rook to h3. And now with this pawn guarding the e6 square, queen h8 followed by rook to h7 will be deadly. So not much you can do here. There is the absolute best defense, queen to g7, but such moves will rarely be found in such short games. To give back the rook and then bishop to d2. Attack the rook, but basically you just want to bring your bishop back to g5, so we'd see something like rook g3, bishop blocks, queen e4 with the threat of f4, and the white will of course eventually still win this game. But it's a bit too much to find in such a quick game. Here Nakamura tried rook to g5, but now comes queen to h8 check, king to f7, and rook to h7, and it was in this position on move 41 that Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game, as he's either getting checkmated in one move or 4 moves depending on what he plays. If he defends with rook g7, just rook captures his checkmate, the pawn still covers the e6 square, and if you try running away with a king to g6, then it takes a few more moves, but after rook h6 check, you have to go back, the pawn covers this, king f7, queen captures on f6 check, king to e8, and now you just drop the rook. Rook h8 check, rook blocks, and rook captures on g8 is checkmate. So really a wild game. After rook to h7 check, Hikaru resigned, and Wesley won this one game with the white pieces, whereas Nakamura was able to draw all the 3 other games. So Wesley is the winner of day 1, and we'll see if Nakamura will be able to bounce back in day 2. And in the match Carlsen versus Nepomniachtchi, Carlsen was also the winner in that match. He won the game that I've shown in the previous video, and 3 other games were drawn. Nepo was brilliantly winning in one game. It was a beautiful winning end game, but Magnus was able to trick him, and he was able to win their first matchup. So we'll see what happens today. Will Nepo equalize? Will Hikaru equalize? And who will we see in the finals of the Skilling Open? So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Marian Rohbaha, Michael Place, Chris Noble, Steven Latus, and BC Ltd for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Skilling Open, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your weekend.